Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Bartz. I'm a therapist, writer, and yoga teacher. And I'm so excited to be here today to speak with Jennifer Keishin Armstrong about her book, Pop Star Goddesses.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm excited to be here. We're doing this for the Gaithersburg Book Festival, which is one of my absolute favorite events. I'm sorry we can't all be together, but we're doing the best we can, and I'm excited to have Julia with me here. She is a friend of mine for many years and has really actually kind of helped to inspire this book because she leads some goddess practices that I have loved. She does some goddess yoga, that sort of thing. And it really was actually part of both my inspiration and my research for this book.
My goodness, that was going to be one of my questions.
Yes. So I'm going to also just briefly show the book so people can see it. There it is right there. So please do check it out, and we will have, info on that later. But there you go.
So maybe I just want to share a couple things about you for maybe viewers who have not seen you before. Jennifer, you are the New York Times bestselling author of Seinfeldia, How the Show About Nothing Changed Everything, A History of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which is called Mary and Lou and Rhoda and Ted, and my personal favorite until this new book, Sex and the City and Us, How Four Single Women Changed the Way We Think, Live, and Love. You spent a decade on staff at Entertainment Weekly, and you've since written for many publications, including BBC Culture, the New York Times Book Review, Vice, New York Magazine, and Billboard. So you have quite a lot of experience with writing and with pop culture, too.
I do. Lots of it.
So I wanted to kind of go back to the genesis of this book, and I'm so happy that one of my workshops kind of inspired a little bit. But I was also thinking about the fact that this just brings so many of your interests together. I know that you're a musician. I know that you're very spiritual, you're Buddhist, and also you love pop culture. And particularly, and you talk about this in the intro, and I love it, your love for Britney Spears.
Yeah, it's really true. Like, I actually have said this before, that this feels like a perfect expression of my soul. You know what I mean? In the way that, like, I've written, I guess this is my 6th book. I'm working on my 7th now. And even so, this is the kind of book where I'm like, I can't believe someone let me do this and paid me money for it, because it just felt like I really threw it on a list that I sent to my agent, and just because it was like a passing thought I had and really never thought she would pick it out. And she was like, that one, that's the one. So I was really excited that she liked it and that it got all the way through the process and that it's out in the world, because it really did feel almost like too, how you feel almost like, is this too specific? Is this just for me and no one else? That it's all of these things. But I had a really good time writing it for that reason. And I was able to kind of bring together, all of these different parts of my interests. And I do also tend to write books about television history. Like, that's my sort of more slightly serious career. So this felt like such a treat. I still get excited every time anyone lets me write about pop music, because I really have, the more I thought about it, the more I realized it goes back to almost like my first memories were, about loving pop music. I loved Marie Osmond when I was a tiny child. And I actually made my mother call me Marie for like a year or so. I wouldn't answer to my regular name. Marie is my middle name, so it sort of felt okay, but that was obviously a coincidence. So it really goes back for me and brings it all together.
What do you think it was about Marie Osmond that really drew you in to that degree?
It's an interesting question. I think, honestly, I do think one part of it was that, she looked a little like me, dark hair, dark eyes, that kind of thing. She was pretty young. I think she was still a teenager at that time, or close to it, like early 20s. So that part, plus it was like, this was Donnie and Marie time. They're obviously famously wholesome. And I think for when you're 4, or something like that. Like that really appealed to me. They had a variety show on TV at the time that I watched religiously, and I found that in its like that's this idea of like I used to love to put on shows when I was a kid. So that, and their music was pretty simple. And then it's creepy, but I sort of had a crush on Donnie too. I didn't really put it together that I shouldn't identify with his sister and have a crush on him. But yeah, I did it. I went full out. I had Barbie doll. They made Barbies that were Donnie and Marie, and they had like a little stage set that you could play with them on. I had a little karaoke record player with their pictures on it. I'm doing this because I have a picture of myself like in front of it with the microphone ready to sing. Yeah, I loved performing when I was a kid. So I was always immediately drawn to, these kinds of role models who I could sing along with and imagine myself as.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's such a universal experience. When I think back, I think some of my earliest pop star goddesses were Mariah Carey and the lovely ladies of TLC.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That kind of leads me to my next question, which is I'm curious how you chose the women that you chose.
Yeah.
Variety of different types of music, but I noticed they're all like living, all pretty young.
Yes. Yeah. So I had really specific parameters, and there's 35 goddesses. So it's like both, that's a lot, but it's surprising that I still cut a bunch of people out. Like there's definitely people that could be in there that aren't. Cause honestly, it was like, I literally got to a point where I was like, I can't, like, this is a lot, I had to really learn about all of these women to write a good essay about them. And I can't be an expert on that many people. So it was a lot of research for each one, and I could only do so much. So they had to start their career, like have their breakthrough in the 90s or later.
Okay.
So that meant there's a bunch of women I mentioned in the introduction. So Madonna, Janet, Whitney, and Cher are the big ones that were not going to be dealt with, because I almost felt like also they go back far enough and they were so influential that it was like, how can you be like, here's Madonna next to Demi Lovato? Do you know what I mean? So it felt like unfair somehow. It was like, Madonna, these are the first ones. These are the originals. They influenced basically every, I think all of those influenced probably all of the women in the book. And then they had to, each one, as you know, each one, I name them the goddess of something. They have a specific energy, right? So, I'm getting it out because I want to like a couple of them. So it's like Adele is the goddess of wisdom through heartbreak, and Celine Dion is the goddess of work-life integration. Carly Rae Jepsen is the goddess of the non-guilty pleasure. Janelle Monáe is the goddess of coming into your own. So they had to have an identifiable goddess energy, and it had to be different, believe it or not, at least a little different from the other 34 women in this book. They had to bring something new to the table. And sometimes it came down to like, oh, I have to choose between, especially maybe the younger ones, because I did try to go pretty recent. And so some of the younger ones, first, it's hard to live up to the same standard. It's still even hard to have a, Cardi B next to a Mariah Carey, just in terms of, career experience. It's like Cardi B had one album, so my power playlist for her is almost all just like her first album, which just came out. But, they had to kind of feel like they could be in the same book as somebody like Celine Dion and contribute something to their some discussion. Because I had to be able to write, 1,000 words plus on each one. So there really had to be something there so that I could work with it. And so there's perfectly lovely girls, especially, I say girls as in like more like the ones in their 20s, where I'm like, you're great, but like Selena Gomez is not in there. I'm sorry, Selenators. But it was hard, especially for some of them who were still just emerging and coming into their own, for me to figure out if they could make it. The latest breaking ones were, I think, Ariana Grande and maybe Cardi B, might be a few others, but those were the ones where like they just made it. They're like as I was writing, I was like, oh no, we have to add Ariana. She just got there as far as I'm concerned. And then Cardi B was just coming out, but she was such a strong presence that I felt like, oh, I think even though she just has one album, I think she's going to hold up because she's pretty distinctive and there's so much to say about her. So it was hard. It was really, really hard.
Yeah. And I really appreciated how you mentioned that you researched everyone. There's like pages and pages of sources that you use.
Yes.
And I feel like I learned so much about different artists that I thought that I knew everything about. And it also led to a lot of like YouTubing. Like, for example, Alicia Keys, like you start by talking about how she was like doing a tribute for Prince and everything was like, yeah, it was like chill and good. And then she just started climbing on top of the piano, and she was pregnant at this time, by the way.
Super pregnant.
And, like, how have I not seen that? So I immediately had to go to YouTube and look at that. So there's just like so many amazing moments that you talk about.
Yes, it was a lot. And it, to be honest, it was one of those things kind of where it happens a lot with books. Books are hard. They should be hard to do. But like you come up with an idea, you sell it to somebody, and then they say yes. And then you're like, oh, I have to figure out how to do this. And it did take, I felt like it took a little more for each woman than I had fully anticipated, maybe because before, like I've usually always focused on, you know, like one TV show in a book, whereas there's something different about having to like switch gears each time to a whole new woman, whole new life story. She has her own giant fan base who's going to be like, actually, you know, and who all have memorized all of those moments for that one woman, but I had to get them for every single one of them. And yeah, there's also just a lot where it's kind of fun and you want to spend time there. I wanted to spend time watching all of these women do a lot of stuff that you can't necessarily catch it all. It's like they're always off at some European Music Awards, you know, having some great moment or this or that you might not necessarily remember or see when you're just going about your daily life. So I was watching a lot of videos and reading a lot of stuff, and it was fun, but it was a lot more intense than I had expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved reading it.
Good.
I want to talk about the other part of this book, which I really love too, which is the fact that, and we go back to research here, that you pair every single pop star with a historical goddess. And beyond that, you talk about that historical goddess, and you have a page of mantras, of journal prompts, of ways to channel this pop star. Yeah, so I'm curious about that process too, like pairing them with historical goddesses, and then also, I don't know if you felt like you were channeling goddess energy for each one, or how did you come up with those like activities?
Yeah, that was a huge part of my original vision for this book, because I just love, actually what it was, honestly, was I'm sure you know this book. It's a book called Awakening Shakti by Sally Kempton that I had read that was a huge inspiration during this. It was just one of those weird moments where I was like reading that book and I looked up over my desk. I have a sign that says, what would Beyonce do? And like, so it just sort of all came together for me, like that you could have a book that was about how these women were like goddesses, and you could have these questions and activities and things. And that's what she does for historical goddesses. And that was one of my favorite aspects of that book. And I just really, really wanted that. There's something very, I don't know, I think just fun and satisfying. And I also love journal prompts. It's a weird thing, but I like to journal, but I find, like many people, that sometimes it's hard to get going. And so that just kind of all came together in my head, and I really wanted it. But it's another part of the book where it seemed really good at the proposal stage. And then I went to do it and I was like, this is a lot of stuff. So especially the historical goddesses. I had originally mentioned historical goddesses like within the essays, and one of my first readers of my proposal was like, wouldn't it be cool if you did this? And I was like, sure. And then I really had to do it for every single one. So what I would usually do is, you know, have the goddess come up with what she's going to represent. She's going to be the goddess of fun or whatever. And then I would just do research in terms of like, is there, you know, as you know, a lot of historical goddesses out there, they are often known as the goddess of something. And so I would just sort of start searching around for like, what is there one that's sort of similar to this energy that I'm talking about with this pop star goddess. And I would try to just match them as closely as I could. And I liked doing that because I liked to really highlight how really similar, like it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say joke concept, you know what I mean? There's like a lightness to the concept, but I wanted to show like, no, we really do treat our pop stars like goddesses. They really each have like a mythology that surrounds her. This is a good chance for me to mention, I like to emphasize that I don't know these women's lives for real. I don't know what goes on between, say, Beyonce and Jay-Z, but a huge part of her particular chapter is her relationship with her famous husband. And to me, the important part of that is not what actually went on. It's actually the story we tell about it, because that's how right? And that's how gods and goddesses have always worked. They have a story that surrounds them that is usually quite fantastical. The gods and goddesses often interact among their stories, which is another thing that happens with pop star goddesses. Like, Jay-Z shows up in multiple chapters in different roles. He was a mentor to Rihanna. He was, husband of Beyonce. I believe like there's a couple men I'm pretty sure that show up as, dating multiple goddesses. John Mayer certainly has known his share of pop star goddesses. So I like that in a way. And there's feuds among the goddesses. And I think that's great because that's very, very kind of like Greek and Roman goddess thing to do. So it really, if you look at those little stories about the traditional goddesses, it shows you how there really is this similarity. And they're often flawed, which is another thing that I think
totally
is important, right? That's, to me, that turned out to, I didn't realize that when I started writing it, but between the traditional goddesses and the pop star goddesses, I realized that really the key to this whole thing is that they're all flawed, and most of them end up getting kind of their superpower, their goddess energy, from overcoming a pretty serious difficulty in public life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. And even some moments that, like I think about Britney going through her mental breakdown, even these moments, like, I mean, at the time, like people were so awful about what she was going through, and I think now we would probably look at it differently. But even these moments of quote unquote shame have really led to empowerment.
Yeah, that to me was, I mean, I knew that about Britney, and I knew that's how her chapter was going to be, because I call her the goddess of resilience, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I am often jumping to her defense in public. I think it's so mean when people say mean things about her, because she's never done, you cannot name one thing, and this is not true for most public figures, even ones I really like. You cannot name one mean, bad thing that this woman has ever done. And if you listen to people talk about her, other famous people, they will say the same thing. They'll always be like, she is a perfect angel. Do not say anything bad about her. So she has hurt no one. And we tried very hard to destroy her, and we did not succeed. And that is why I think it's incredible. And it doesn't matter. Like at this point, I don't care what her artistic output is. I don't care. From here on out, I would understand if either she wanted to fade from view or didn't want to make music anymore. I love when she does, but it would be totally understandable if she didn't. I just think it's incredible that she survived that and says something about her spirit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, we could just spend the rest of the time talking about Britney.
I love her. And I mean, there is something to me that's part of what's so interesting for me about her always. This has always been true. I mean, except for the very beginning, but very soon afterwards, I was as interested in her like narrative as I was in her music and her as a person. And to me, that's also so goddessy. Like to me, that's why these women are goddesses. And I think it's very interesting too that, I don't think we see male pop stars the same way as much. I don't feel like it's as much about their narrative. Maybe it's just that we don't give them nearly as hard a time about everything. And so they tend to just like, Justin Bieber just gets to be like, chilling out, making music and doing whatever he wants. And everybody's like, great, this is great. Whereas these women, all of them, like so many of the trials that I talk about come from public life and how we treat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to also ask, I don't know if this is a weird question, but I imagine that in the process of writing this, like, did you have any, like, I don't know, like spiritual experiences? Did you feel like connected with a certain goddess during the writing process? Like, did anything kind of come up during that time?
I mean, for sure, so there would be times when, because I was on a reasonably tight deadline, given 35 goddesses and all the research, I really had it mapped out very clearly on my calendar. Like, it would be like every couple days, I essentially gave myself a new deadline for a new goddess, which meant I could live in the space of Casey Musgraves for like 3.5 days. And then I was going to have to move on to Janelle Monáe. That's just the way it was. So I did, though. There were times when I was very like into the space that I was in. I mentioned Casey Musgraves because that might be the one that I felt that the most with. And I don't want to say it was a surprise exactly, because I kind of knew I was into her already, but the sort of fraction of a week that I got to really like, and I would try to like, it's so nerdy, but I really would, if I could, try to do some of the things that I was suggesting people do as the activities. I would listen to the music. I might journal one of the questions. I tried to try out as many questions as I could just to make sure they made sense and worked. So I really like loved her energy. And I also feel very drawn to it right now during our lockdown times, because she has this very, I would say, like, if I'm using kind of spiritual woo-woo words, she has this very sort of high vibration energy. Her last album, which was a masterpiece, and everyone knows that because it got 3 zillion awards, Golden Hour, if you want to just feel like good but chill, it's so great. She did write some of it on LSD, so that could be part of it, or acid. But it has this very like uplifting, it's about falling in love with her husband, which you don't get albums like that every day. Most albums are like heartbreak, and that's usually great, but she wrote it in this up phase. And it makes me want to just like get out crystals and do yoga all the time. And she said like she loves that stuff, and she said that if she wasn't, an internationally famous country singer, she would be a yoga teacher. So it's not a coincidence, but there's something to me that was like very appealing about her whole vibe and that whole thing that I wanted to stay in. I'd say like Janelle Monáe too, and it's not dissimilar a vibe. It's a little bit different, but she too has this, I guess it's just a very sort of soulful feeling to both of them that I found particularly appealing. Those are the ones that stand out for me.
Oh, that's amazing. So you really all of their energy every couple days listening to the music.
Yeah. And obviously it's very different than when you're into like Beyonce or you're on Adele or like any of those. And I loved all of them. Like, it was fun. And there were a few too that I would say like I hadn't appreciated fully, or is kind of almost, I don't want to say I was dreading them exactly, but like there were people I knew had to be in the book that I was like, whatever. It's because there's 35. How could I be into all of them? Like a Katy Perry I'm thinking of, or something like that, where it's like, I don't know, I've just never really like fully connected with her. But she's huge, and actually I ended up writing about how huge she is, and I thought that was really cool. I actually loved that chapter in the end. It's really about how she sort of unapologetically likes to write giant hits, and it's okay to want to have giant hits and succeed in that way, in this huge way, and to even feel competitive about it. I think that that's a really good lesson for women. And so that was like one of those. There were definitely ones like that, and there were definitely ones where I knew I wanted them there, but I didn't really know that much about them. I felt like I learned a ton about Missy Elliott, for instance, doing this. I knew instinctively, like I knew why she was important, and I I really want, like, I got that she was, I think she's my goddess of like, I want to get it right. So, and it's funny. So Missy Elliott is my goddess of powerful weirdness. And I knew that's what I wanted. And I love that idea. Like, I love that she gave women this vision of like just being super avant-garde, but also strange, but cool. And I wanted all of that, but I didn't really know about her life and that kind of thing. So yeah, there were a bunch of them that I also just learned a ton about. That was really fun. And sometimes I'd be like, I wish I could stay here longer, but I have to move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to go back to that question that you brought up a little earlier, that, you know, why we really tap into the narratives of these women. And it makes me think about just an example that came to mind is Fiona Apple and her new album that just came out, and how she did all of it like in her home. She, you know, it's extremely feminist too.
Yes.
And I think that there is this hunger that a lot of girls and women have, and actually, you know, people of all genders, to connect to this, you know, feminine, traditionally feminine energy, Shakti energy, Yin energy. And I'm kind of curious to ask, like, who do you think that this book speaks to, or like, who do you hope like picks up this book? Like,
it's a good question. I mean, I definitely always envisioned like women for the most part, but I think that's just because I identify as a woman. So it's like I was imagining women kind of like me, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older. But what's funny is even while I was writing it, it started to occur to me first, for instance, that like, oh, there's probably a number of gay men who will enjoy this. They make up a large fan base for a lot of these women. And hilariously, that had not occurred to me when I had first conceived the book. And then like, I've had this very surprising thing since it has been out. I mean, this is just two men, but it feels like a lot. Like two middle-aged cisgendered white men who I know like love it. And so, and you know, mainly came to it because of me to a large extent. But like, I've had this experience. I was doing these when it first came, the month it came out, I was doing acoustic versions of Pop Star Goddess songs every weekday that I posted online, because there was like, we can't go out and promote this thing, so what can we do? So this is what I was doing. So a lot of my feedback has come from this, and definitely this middle-aged white man that I know like loved, like he's like been to multiple Taylor Swift shows, and like keeps telling me all, like he was a genuine fan of a lot of these women. And it was really eye-opening to me to just realize like, I shouldn't be assuming that it's just 30-year-old women, you know, who love Taylor Swift or Mariah Carey or Casey Musgraves or any of these things. Like, they do actually, we have ideas about what we think certain fandoms are, but you know, I think that a lot of them cross a lot of different boundaries. And of course, especially people like Mariah or Celine Dion, like, of course they do. They're huge, huge stars who have been around for decades. So yeah, it's funny because I mean, I really had an idea in my head of who might be into this, but it can be for everyone.
Yeah, and I really think that it should be. I think there's like kind of a tipping back into like more of a balance of the yin and yang. So I hope that a lot of dudes pick this up and look into it.
Yeah, I would love that. And I think, but it is also interesting. Like you can't imagine an equivalent book that you would think men would pick up. Does that make sense? Like there really wouldn't be, I don't imagine a world where there would be pop star gods that like men would pick up and want to be like figure out how to be more like John Mayer. I just don't. I could be wrong. Like if someone wants that book and they want to pay me for it, you know, feel free to contact me. But it's just very hard for me to imagine, even though I'm sure like plenty of dudes would be like, sure, it'd be cool to be Justin Bieber, but I just don't imagine, and I do genuinely believe, especially having both written this book and then being out talking about it, I have realized how much we do not build the same kind of thing around male pop stars. And I think that's mostly because of sexism. I also, though, think it ends up giving our female pop stars a lot more of a presence and something in our, maybe it's not all good for them, but I don't think it's all bad either. You know, it's certainly much more pleasant to be Justin Timberlake, and you can apparently make whatever music you want and everyone thinks it's fine and you can just do whatever you want, and you know, no one ever asks you why you aren't more feminist or whatever. Like, you know, it's just great. It looks like it's a pretty good time. You date and marry beautiful women. But I do think there's something that's elevating about being Beyonce. I mean, Beyonce is different, but I think she's like the goddess of goddesses. She's the middle of the cover of this book for a reason. But even like a Lady Gaga or something like that, it's like there is something that elevates them above those men, and I think part of it is this mythos that surrounds them.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you had to pick a pop star goddess of this year.
It's so hard. I might cheat right now and say Fiona Apple. Fiona Apple is not in the book, and part of the reason was I was definitely trying to, I didn't say this when I was talking about my parameters, but I was generally trying to pick women who were kind of in the public consciousness-ish or making music semi-current. And so some people didn't quite make it who then have since like reemerged, like a Fiona Apple or an Alanis Morissette, who's kind of like out there again. And I like love both of them a lot. Like I went to Lilith Fair. I was there, very, very, very into them, but just, I didn't feel like they were top of mind musically at the moment. So, but she's like, isn't that crazy? Like, it's wild to me that she made a masterpiece album in her house that was released during a time when we're all stuck in our houses. I just think that's crazy. Like, it's such a weird zeitgeisty thing to end up doing. And a bunch of other women are stuck with albums that they don't know what to do with right now, because like Lady Gaga was about to release a huge album. But because she can't promote it in the normal ways, they're like, we don't know, what do we do? So right now they're waiting, and I don't know if they'll continue to wait or not. But it kind of feels a little bit like Fiona Apple reemerged as the goddess of our time. I will also say, and I've been saying this pretty much every time I talk about this book publicly, but Britney Spears' Instagram during quarantine, I mean, it's always great.
I've heard good things. I actually haven't looked at it yet.
You'll like, especially if you want to keep scrolling, like you could scroll back significantly and continue to be very entertained. But the joke I keep making is like, Brittany's been self-quarantining for way longer than the rest of us. Like, she has this down. She knows how to do it. My favorite thing that she does, and this is not just quarantine, she's been doing it for years, she just like puts on fashion shows in her house for Instagram. She'll just try on a bunch of different outfits and like make videos of herself walking up and down her hallway to like whatever music she's chosen. She does a lot of, you know, quick made up dance routines for Instagram, backflips, yoga poses. She burned down her home gym, she recently revealed, but she left candles on. You know how it is. When you're a goddess, you need candles to work out to, and it just one led to another. Everyone's fine. No one's hurt, so it's okay. But like, to me, she's been kind of, you know, I know that she kind of came out to do some Vegas shows sometimes, but basically she's been locked down for some time and has kind of mastered that whole aesthetic. The other day, she just did a video of herself, like in a big floppy hat, walking through her garden. Sure, why not? You know, I love it. And
she's just gonna do what she wants and have fun.
Yeah, and so she's total queen of quarantine to me. But oh, and also something fun happened with her. Here I am breaking news for you. If you do not know already, I know all the fandom knows, but the fans got her last album, Glory, which everyone go stream Glory, 2016 masterpiece album that no one knew about because they did not promote it correctly. It's a really, really good album, I swear. And her fans, with nothing else to do in quarantine, all like did a concerted effort to stream it and made it hit #1 last week on Spotify, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And her people even put up like a new album cover and stuff to sort of just like commemorate it and refresh it. And I'm here for Justice for Glory. I think everyone should go listen to it. I swear to God, it's a really good album. It's like, it's almost no skips kind of album. Like, it's really good.
I have a lot to like go listen to after this.
There's so much. Like, there's so much. Like, I was so happy in a way to get, because sometimes I think, especially now, there's just so much content that you hear about something, you're like, oh, I want to do that, and then once you miss it, it's kind of hard to like get back to it. Whole shows might pass you by, and you're just like, all right, I'm just never going to do that. And albums are the same thing, and I was really happy in some cases here. Like, one of the things that I not entirely missed, but kind of didn't really get to fully enjoy was also a Mariah Carey album from a few years ago, Caution, that very few people paid attention to, and is great. And a lot of these are also really good workout music. So if you're just like sick of listening to the same thing all the time when you go out for your walks or runs, that kind of thing, there's a lot of content. And I actually have playlists on Spotify and Apple Music. I made master playlists that put together all of my little playlists from within the book into one big one. So that's an easy place to start.
Oh, nice. I was going to ask if you can like share more of that.
Yeah. And I mean, I certainly recommend, of course, I made the little, within the book, each one has like a power playlist, but even those are super curated. It's like, there's a bunch of great songs that I didn't put on them because I was really trying to concentrate on the energy that I said she invoked, that she represented. The songs are sort of like geared toward that. So there's plenty of great songs, especially with these artists who have incredibly long catalogs. I also made a Britney Spears deep cuts playlist if people want to listen to weird avant-garde Britney Spears, which is a real thing that exists. Almost every one of her albums has a bunch of like, especially the bonus tracks often tend to be like super weird, interesting songs instead of her very mainstreamy stuff. So there you go.
Who knew? Wow. Yeah, so I was wondering if we maybe wanted to move into a final meditation.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I was thinking about this. I was thinking maybe we should do a little goddess meditation and just invite in whatever goddess we should be working with over the next few days or few weeks.
Sounds good.
How that goes with everyone. Okay. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what's a good?
Let's do 5 minutes. And then certainly feel free to go longer if you're grooving on it at home.
All right, great. So we'll close our eyes. We'll sit up a little bit taller, placing our feet flat on the floor. And just taking a few deeper breaths into the belly. Taking a moment to come into the space. Noticing any sounds or noises around you. Noticing the quality, the temperature of the air. Noticing the floor supporting our feet, the chair supporting our bodies, and just enjoying that really grounded, supported feeling. So we'll start with a bit of a body scan. beginning at the top of the head and then moving slowly down through the entire body. Noticing along the way if there's any points in the body that feel constricted, that feel a little tight or a little heavy, physically or emotionally. I'm just taking note of it without any judgment. If it feels possible to gently loosen any of those places, maybe there's a little tension in the jaw or the shoulders, just bringing a little extra relaxation. So we'll take a hand and place it to either the chest or the belly. And opening up the space in order for us to realize or notice if there's any type of question coming up for us. It could be more general, it could be very personal. So just noticing whatever question arises without any judgment. So gently holding that question in space, we're going to welcome in a goddess. Imagining her walking towards us. Maybe she sits down in front of us. Maybe she sits down beside us. But just noticing the incredible amount of support, empathy, and love that she's bringing. Maybe you can see who she is. Maybe she's someone you recognize. She could be a pop star. She could be a historical goddess. She could be someone else entirely. But again, just sitting with her for a moment and allowing that support and love to flow in. We're going to offer our question to her. Maybe it's symbolic, maybe it's something that you're giving to her, maybe you're actually asking her the question internally. And then allowing a little space for either a response from her, she has a response to share now, or the knowledge that you'll begin to get a response from her within the next few days. So to start to close this meditation, we're going to thank this goddess for being with us, for supporting us, for offering us information now or in the future. We also want to remind ourselves that we can return to this place at any time. If we have more questions, if we just want to sit with her for a bit, we can always call her up. So to close, we're going to take 3 deep breaths together. Take a deep inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale. Exhale. And last time, inhale. And exhale. And then gently opening up the eyes when we're ready.
That was great. Thank you.
Oh, of course.
Well, thank you everyone for being here with us at the Gaithersburg Book Festival via our homes. And thank you so much, Julia, for this lovely conversation and this meditation.
Of course. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. And everyone should order this book immediately. It's beautiful. The illustrations are amazing. The prompts are incredible. Yeah, look at that. That's so great.
Beautiful. I actually would like to say before we close, because I like to mention this whenever I can, that the illustrations are by an artist named Robin Merkel. They have a whole line of candles called Flaming Idols. I actually have one right here. This is the Beyonce one right there. They're really lovely, and there's pop star goddesses, but there's a lot more too. The whole idea is basically LGBTQ idols, and each one even also comes with like a little explanation on the back of why that person is specifically important to the LGBTQ community. There have all kinds of lovely, adorable ones, like, and expanding all of the time. There's a Grace and Frankie one. There's a Bayard Rustin, 1960s civil rights activist. So it really runs the gamut. It's like you can get Beyonce or you can get Bayard Rustin, you can get Grace and Frankie. It's really incredible. And that is actually how we found Robin, this artist, and hired them to do the illustrations. And I think they turned out, they're just so cute. And this was exactly what I had pictured when I imagined this book. So I feel really gorgeous. It's such a good gift book. It is intended as a gift book, and great for yourself and also others.
Great. So their name is Robin Merkel?
Yes. And you can actually check out their Etsy store, Flaming Idols. If you just Google that, you'll find it. And if you want to find information about me or my books, I am at jenniferkarmstrong.com. Julia, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Sure. Yeah, they can find me. My Instagram is Julia Bartz Wellness, and my Twitter is just Julia Bartz.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been great. And again, I have so much to go listen to right now. I'm excited.
Quarantine entertainment right here. Thanks everybody for being with us.
Everyone. Bye.